To discuss today is the concept of effective communication, all right? And there's a lot of ways to be effective. However, there's a couple key skill sets that you can use like a tool, anything else, that with practice, you can become extremely proficient and you will greatly improve the effectiveness of your communication, okay? And that's what we're going to work on today. We're going to do a little bit of, I'm going to talk, also going to do some interaction because I want you to actually be able to plug and play with the skills so you can feel it. And then we can work on it a little bit more, clean it up, have a little Q&A, because there's always the theory, right? You go to the seminar, you hear the thing and you're like, okay, that sounds good in theory. Then you go back home and you try it for a few days and like, it's not as easy as it sounded. And so the idea is when I have you pair up and do exercises, this is a safe place. Please commit to yourself to go all in and do it and play all in, because that's the best way you'll get results. Just like going to the gym. Walking in the gym does not help you get in shape. You actually have to do something while you're there. Same concept. Fair? Yeah. Okay. So I wrote down a couple things. I'm going to just look at my notes because I want to make sure we only have 1 hour to do this in. In the last 2 months, I've been hired by companies to come in. One of them had explosive growth, and there was a lot of disconnect between departments, and people just weren't getting along. But I had 3 hours to work with. And so we're going to do a lot of what I did there in 1 hour. So I'm going to move through things relatively quickly. However, when it does come time for question and answers, I am interested in hearing. My objective is to make sure you walk out of here with effective skills to be able to improve your communication. But I do have to make a disclaimer. And this is real, I'm not kidding. What you learn and what you start working on today is going to be a problem, because you will not be able to unlearn it and you will now be aware of it. Most importantly, when you break it, but what's going to show up for you is how often other people break the rules that I'm going to teach you today. Unfortunately, what you're going to take away from it is you're going to realize that people don't care about what you're saying. It's a difficult thing to stomach. And anytime I tell it to people, like, oh, that's pretty funny. No, it's going to be very apparent that people aren't really listening to you. However, if you want to be an effective communicator, it's key that you are a master of these tools. You are a master of these skills. I've been told by several people that knew me a long time ago in my career, and then they had an interaction with me later, and they're like, you are completely different than how you communicated when you were a young pup as a real estate sales guy. Very little about what I do with anybody that I meet with is about me at all. In fact, a lot of times people will say, it was so good to know you, get to know you. You'll hear a good story about that in a minute. They won't even know my name. But it's the space that I create that allows them to communicate, us to connect in a way that we're able to move forward. All right. What's the difference between influence and manipulation? By the way, on the Q&A part, yeah. Difference between manipulation and influence.
Manipulation is form of negative.
Yeah, definitely a negative connotation. What else? Trying to coerce somebody into something they don't want to do. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to sum it up in one word: intent. Right? What is your intent? Are you intending to talk to somebody into something they don't want to do? Are you taking them down a negative path? I promise you, if you are, it will blow up in your face. Maybe not immediately on the spot, but people start feeling uncomfortable with things that are going against what's in their best nature. They figure it out or they freak out along the way, which makes your job that much more difficult. And when I say your job, whatever your career is, somewhere along the line, whether that's in a relationship in your family or in your professional lives, it's going to come back. So I do need everybody here to stand up for a second. So please stand. You're going to take an oath.
Oh dear.
So you're going to raise your right hand. Okay, repeat after me. Now, when I say I state your name, you're not gonna say state your name like on the Funny Baby show. You're actually gonna say your name, okay? So I state your name, promise to use these tools for good and not evil. All right, thank you. Go ahead. We can continue on.
We had some Zoom people participating.
Okay, good. So what does it mean to communicate?
To effectively relay a message or
Okay,
gather information.
okay, yes. What else?
Get your ideas across.
Get your ideas across. Yes, absolutely. Ah, they understand what you're saying though. That's very good. So it's like you looked at my notes, so good job. Communication does not mean understanding has taken place. But understanding means communication has taken place. Communication does not mean an understanding has taken place, but understanding means communication has taken place. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody where there might be a language barrier? Where you're able to figure out how to communicate with pointing and hand signals and everything else, right? So there's a lot of forms that come into play when it's time for communication. I want to tell you a story in a moment. Before we do that, I want you to write this down. This is kind of my definition or my understanding of communication, if you're taking notes. Communication takes place when the words and actions of the speaker are interpreted by the listener as intended by the speaker. Anybody else have any communication times where you think you were clear on what you said, but something turned out like quite a bit different? And they were like, but you said, right? So, and by the way, everything we're talking about works in all aspects of your life. So, you know, Shannon will say all the time, she's like, he's literal. To explain it in a way that, because if she says to me like, I'm gonna be ready, I'm getting ready to leave, I'm assuming we're leaving in a few minutes. That could mean an hour to an hour and a half for her perspective, right? She's not wrong. And I just, like, I'm literal, she's getting ready to leave, I should like, because like, how long does it take for me to do my hair? Like less than a second, right? So what we want to work on our communication is getting clarification. Making sure if information is coming to us, that we are actually asking, please help me understand, what does that mean? So I'm gonna tell you a story about misinterpretation. I was with a very good friend of mine and his son, Cody, and Cameron Kildane, father and son. And we were doing a little project in the backyard, and Cody, maybe probably 9 or 10. And I don't know how we got on this subject. But at some point, Cameron had, asked Cody, what do you think you want to do, when you grow up? Because we're just talking about things. And Cody said,
Sorry.
no, come on in. No, we got me nervous. You're slowed down. Yeah, there's two back. Yeah. That slowing down got me nervous. I was like, oh, somebody's gonna jump out. Like, Cody punking me here was.
You know, I was.
I was speaking for Tom Perry, like, it was probably 18, 19 years ago at one of his events. My kids were really little, and remember Barney the dinosaur?
Yes.
Well, it was on all this house, and I literally loathed, and Tom knew this. In the middle of one of my presentations, the door opened, and somebody in a Barney dinosaur thing come walking in, and I'm literally shaking. So, anytime somebody's walking in slowly. So, Cody, the young man, he says, well, I really want to, I'm interested, like, what if Bill Gates? And Cameron says, you want to be Bill Gates? I didn't even know you like computers. And he starts, we got to get your computer, da, 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 da. And I say, Cody, say it again. He says, well, I want to build Gates like that one. So he heard Bill Gates because he wants to do something really amazing. He just really just wanted to build some Gates, right?
Yeah.
So obviously a very simple, innocent example, but how often does that happen in all of our lives? All right, so I'm going to ask you to do in a moment, not yet. It's going to be two people get together. You can turn right next to the person what have you. One person's gonna be person A and person B. We don't have a lot of time, so I don't need you to spend a lot of time figuring out who's A and B. This doesn't really matter. You're both gonna get to do the exercise. Just one's gonna go first. Pick a partner right now, figure out who's A and B.
Alright, okay.
Partners.
Okay, all right.
So what I want you to do
Right.
is I want you to explain about a recent vacation that you went on. And it could have been last year, but something you really had a fun time, right? So who's partner A? Raise your hand. Okay. You're gonna be the listener. Okay, partner B, you're gonna be sharing about your most recent experience. Guys, have a dialogue, like, get in there and talk about it. It's gonna go quick though, so I'm only gonna give you about a minute. Ready? Begin. Like, anybody pick up anything like cool, worthy, like, oh, that was cool to hear about?
Cody,
Yeah, go ahead.
So
Several
Rick
of
told me
us-
about his trip to Maui to go to the jazz festival. Essentially, it was a week-long festival, occurred right on the beach. He got to experience lots of things while he was there, and he told me that he doesn't like toy, and I have no idea why. That's just one so small.
Takes my butt.
All right, that's good, thank you.
Yeah.
Who else? Anybody want to say yes?
So they went on a cruise to Bahamas, it's Dad's 70th birthday, first time he'd ever been on a cruise. They went to this private island called Jean Van Dyke or something like that. And they went to the Soggy Dollar bar
Ah, yeah,
where the pina
famous,
colada was invented.
very good, thank you. Anybody else want to share? Yep, here and then there.
My friend Agatha spent spring break with her daughter and husband in Kingman, where they did shopping, probably a lot of shopping, museum, and she drove there because she loves to drive.
All right. Trip, we know who to call.
so, she met her nephew and son in Texas and drove to LA. And they spent some time there, then they went to, Phoenix, Arizona, what was the small town? Goodyear, Arizona. And it was just a lot of fun to spend time with their son and nephew. They sang and did a dance party in the car. She drove the whole way, so she was a little bit tired from that, but other than that, I agreed.
Very good. All right, so did anybody who was the sharing person learn anything about the person who was listening? Couple? Okay. What did you learn? You were the listener?
I was the speaker.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah, you were the speaker. What did you learn about the list?
I learned his name. Jeff, I thought I was excited.
Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay, yep,
I learned that she was interested in what I had to say. She
Okay.
took note of where the place that I had told her.
Okay.
So she was really into it.
I noticed that she wanted to be engaged and she was excited. She was waiting for something and then she kind of got a little lost somewhere in between. But she was very much so intentional with her listening. She just missed the point that my nephew and my son were with me before we went to LA. I did not meet them.
okay,
So that was just it.
but you could tell that she was really
She
interested.
was intentional.
Okay, you know, I saw a hand over there, yeah.
I learned it, but still wanted to go where I had gone.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. I think we could all say, we weren't there, but we would say yes to everything. Good, so now I'm gonna have you just reverse it, okay? We're 1 minute again, real quick, meaning the other person's gonna share any vacation that you went on worth sharing. Okay, ready? And begin. All right, same questions. For those that are listening, anybody learn anything that like neat or anything? Yes.
I learned that this young lady, even though she loves her kids and she loves to do things with her immediate family, she did a girls trip, which was still an immediate family, with her mom and her best friend and her best friend's mom. And even though she's used to going on vacation and just sipping on a cocktail on the beach, she got interactive. She swam with some turtles. She hung out. She learned where the lava tube was,
Nice.
and she just had a great time.
All right,
Her mom and her best friend.
that's excellent. Anybody else? Yes.
I learned that she and her daughter and her daughter's friend, they took a little girls trip down to Santa Barbara. They went to the zoo. They decided they really love continental breakfast, only cars.
Well, I didn't. That's she had for the hotel.
Sure. It's down to Santa Barbara.
Okay, over here, and then Dave.
So I learned about Avenat tradition. She actually went back to her hometown in Chicago in spring of 2023. For the naming of her grandchildren, one boy and great grandchildren. Oh, I didn't see. I like, no, that's grandchildren, not great grandchildren, but it is grandchildren. That they have a ceremony and they name their children their African name and their American names. So they put their African name first and then their American name second. And that is a lot of traditions I learned from her is, you know, that other countries do that too, that they have an American name and, you know, another, a different name or a family name, I would say. But it was wonderful to hear that from her because I feel like we have something in common that, you know, the family, her family and my family do that too, that they have American name and they have a Mexican name. So I feel like we're not that different because we do combine that with food and everything else. So it's like something we have in common, you know what I mean?
We're gonna go to Dave.
Very cool. So Jim here, 2 times in 18 and 19 went to Vietnam.
Oh.
And said it was an amazing, life-changing experience. Met his bride there and married. And said its cultural differences are amazing and the people are so wonderful and accepting and the food is outstanding. I believe the word he used was life-changing.
Right on. So I'm just gonna switch in to just check in with the audience. Did you listen any different today? Or this kind of thing that you do all the time?
That's normal to me.
Good, good. Yeah, but it's just a notice on your part, right? Sometimes when we're put in a room or act with intention, sometimes we like heighten our listening, like, oh, I'm told I gotta listen, I better really actually listen. But what I want you to also understand is you get a feeling immediately of when somebody's listening to you. Because the instructions were one person share. If I had told you to go talk, you both have been one-upping each other left and right, right? And that's normal. So I want you to write down these thoughts. There's 3 ways to listen. Okay? Way number 1 would be listening to respond. Okay? Listening to respond. Oftentimes, in this form of listening, it's disagreement. Okay? And so if you find yourself in a disagreement and you're listening to respond, I can tell you that you're missing. Okay? We'll explain why in a moment. The second way to listen is listen to be right or agree. Like this is to confirm your beliefs. Like, yep, oh yeah, I agree with that. Yep, that makes sense. By the way, a lot of salespeople. Are you on track or are you off track with what I think you should be thinking so that I can help buy or sell or whatever it is? Okay. So, problem with these first 2 ways is no new information gets in. So from a sales perspective, if you're listening to respond, let's just say objection, you're already fixated on the direction you're going to go. And no new information, no new understanding about that person is going to get in to you. The third way to listen is to listen to understand. When you listen to understand, you're just open and you're just being with the information that you're hearing. You all have these skills in you. This is not new. But my intention on this listening is to heighten your awareness as to when and what tool you are grabbing when you're in any communication. Now, I can tell you it's very easy in a husband and wife dynamic or any other relation dynamic is if you're in a little bit of a battle on viewpoints that you're listening to respond, right? And so, I mean, for me, what I realize is that's not the most effective tool that I can grab. It's the one I like the most because I sure want to get my point across, but it doesn't really move it forward. So I'm going to give you a couple of notes on when you listen to understand. And listen first before you write this down. I'll repeat. People actually don't feel heard when you listen. It's only when you accept what they're saying that they feel heard. It's only when you accept what they're saying. Now, that doesn't mean you have to agree with their crazy viewpoint or, something you don't believe in. But if you can understand and give an acknowledgement that you've heard them, oftentimes they'll put down the axe. They won't feel the need to keep chopping on this tree to get their point across. So what are different ways that you can give somebody that acknowledgement that they might know that you've understood them or you've heard them? Yes.
Let me make sure I understand you. Repeat what they've said. That's worked well with some of my relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That works great with clients, right? So just so I'm clear, this is what I think you've shared. And you try to summarize,
You don't say it sarcastically. Look at this right here.
It's over well at home.
Because I've done sarcastic thing and I've done the other thing. And the other thing was something.
That's ever used to compassion. So what else?
Sometimes eye contact, but that doesn't always work based on culture.
Yes, that's definitely a cultural thing. What I will say here, in the US, I can talk to you, and while I'm talking to you, I can be looking all around the room. But if I look back and you're not looking at me, you broke my. You're not listening. Yeah, because you're the listener. So as the listener, you hear with your ears, but you listen with your eyes. Right? So if I'm looking at you while you're telling me the story about your vacation, and every time you kind of look around and you come back and I'm still like, all right, we're good. And you don't have to stare them directly in the eyes. You can look at the nose, you can look around the chin. I'm looking at you, right? Sometimes I look up here. Now, if they're really tall, because I'm short, I can't do that. But the point being is it's kind of a unwritten. So one of the things that I do when I'm with clients specifically is, and I'll share with you a technique on how to completely close off your own thinking, because that will get in the way, is I just focus on it. Like, I don't worry about anything else that's going on. And what's interesting is they'll go further. Oh, okay, so I hear you. Tell me more. Help me understand that. They'll just keep going. They'll keep going. Because every time they turn around, I'm still looking, right? They're doing recall in their mind. If you study anything about neurolinguistic programming and how eye patterns go to making up a story or recalling based on their auditory senses that they lean on the most, their eyes are going to be all over the place. However, when they look back at you, if you're still engaged, they're like, all right, we're with me. Now I can tell you, and I do this all the time, if I'm talking to someone and I can tell they're clearly no longer listening, I stop talking. It can be very uncomfortable. So people are like, what was he saying? Was there a question at the end of that? No, I'm not doing it to be rude. Clearly I'm off track. Clearly we've broken something here. So can I continue to pile over the top on this? That, to me, it doesn't seem very effective. But by stopping, I can get an opportunity to reassess and get them to re-engage. Maybe I'm off track on what I'm talking. And this is the part about effective communication, is having the courage to be aware of what's going on, and then having the skill set to notice, to go, I lost it somewhere here. Because the last thing any one of us want is to be sitting here, blah, 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 when we're not interested. So stop. Each time you do it, you're going to feel uncomfortable. However, as you do it more and more, they'll look at you and go, well, let's just check back in on where we're at right now. Right? So the listening to understand is that part about people know that they've been heard, that acknowledgement. So we teach agreement phrases, and these are just one word or two word responses like, I can appreciate that. That makes sense to me. Good for you. I like that. That sounds exciting. Any of those kind of things that you're giving confirmation of what you just heard, and they're gonna continue to share. There is a theory that there is only so much hot air in a balloon. So theoretically, they will share everything they need to share, and now it's your opportunity. Now, this is the part where it's most painful for most people when I teach this. Some of you have heard this before because you've heard me teach this, but this is a skill that very few people take the time to master. And I actually have found a new way of explaining it. I think you'll like the new way, Dave. Because the first way, and I'm going to explain the first way first, because it's pretty abrupt, okay? So I'm going to have you write this down first. Effective listening requires mastering. Effective listening requires mastering. Dave, do you know what point I'm going to bring up?
I do, I think, but I'm not gonna guess.
Oh, go ahead, yes. Come on.
String,
Listen, don't relate. You know this. You just didn't know. You were smiling like you knew
I
it.
thought it was something from this weekend,
No, no.
going through my roll.
Listen, don't relate. Start, underline it, circle it. You have, and this is the new way to explain it. You have two options in every conversation. Option one, you can ask more about the subject. It's pretty simple. Option two, and this is where most people kill all communications, is related to yourself.
Oops.
We all do it. This is part of that up front when I told you you're going to realize that nobody cares about what you want to share. When you master this, they will never ask you a question back because they're so excited to get to share with somebody who doesn't take over the conversation. Anybody ever meet a topper? Right? Like you caught a fish this big, they caught a fish that big. You went on vacation for a week, they went for 2 weeks, right? You went to the mountains, they went to a bigger mountain. How exciting is that conversation? Like you feel left empty. Like, well, I was like really excited to share about my trip with my mom and my girlfriends and you know, all the things. And they went, oh my gosh, I went there once and blah, 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 blah. Right? And this happens everywhere. So my running joke is real estate agent. Go out to meet with a client. They say, why are you thinking of moving? Or where are you moving to? And they'll say, Colorado. Colorado. Oh my gosh. I went there 3 years ago with my family. It was so great. We were there doing holidays. It snowed. We went to these restaurants. The food was so good. Oh my, I can't wait to go back. That's the typical conversation. Somebody touched a nerve and they ran with it. The relator in us comes from two things. Number one, we're stimulated by our own experiences. Whether we've had one or we've heard stories about one. Like sometimes you could say, oh, my best friend moved there. Or I've always wanted to visit, right? That's a form of relating, you're taking over. But most of it is done from an innocent perspective. And it's we're trying to build. If we have this in common, then maybe you'll like me more. Maybe you'll hire me. Now, this is true in personal settings as well. Like, I've had a bad day. You think you've had a bad day. Let me tell you about my bad day. We're in rapport. Both of us had a bad day. Now, did either person get any satisfaction from sharing? Probably not. So the list don't relate is an internal voice that in anything you hear will take over. Master communicators, people who are most effective, learn how to master that, ask more about the story or the subject, and they don't spend any time in relating. Now you can relate later, right? So we'll go back to the Colorado story. I talked to a client, why are you moving to Colorado? Or where are you moving Colorado? What's in Colorado? Oh, my daughter and son-in-law, they have 2 kids. Oh, what are you gonna get to do? Well, they're both busy working, so I'm actually gonna get to pick them up after school, and I'm gonna get to take them to soccer and dance, and then make them dinner, and oh my gosh, and how long you've been thinking about this? Oh, ever since they were born, I'm so excited, they called me and asked for help, right? I get to find out all these things. Now, from a sales perspective, since a lot of you here are in real estate, I can now go, listen, I'm here to help you make sure that you're there to take them to soccer and dance, to be able to make dinner. I'm no longer the guy that's here to beat you up about selling your property. Because what happens is, in a moment, people get defensive and protective in the sales field. The same thing happens at home. If your significant other or your kids or anything, they don't get a chance to fully express where they're at, they're not giving you the same courtesy back. But you also don't get to learn a single thing about what's really going on. So the listen, don't relate skill set is one that takes practice. So we talk about role playing in life in general. This is where you get to make mistakes. Like throw out some stuff that's juicy. Right? That you want to talk about grandkids and great grandkids, and I put that on the table and it's going to stoke your fire a little bit, right? Will you take the bait? Or will you stay on task asking questions about this?
Dave, what was the second thing that you said about listen, don't relate?
Okay, first one is ask more about the subject. The second one is relate it to yourself. This is where you'll take over and do your sharing. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, it is a natural instinct for your relator in your brain to go, I've got an opinion about this. Because you have an opinion about everything, especially things you know nothing about. It's part of the human experience. Like we all do it. Right or wrong, guilty or not, it happens all the time. Somebody shares something with you and you think it's dangerous. You've never done it, but you're like, oh my God, that's dangerous. I used to do off-road motocross race. And I would say, well, what do you got? What you got going on this weekend? Oh, I got a big race. I do a 60 miler in the desert. No, be careful. I'm like, that's actually the worst advice you can give me. Because being careful tends to be tense and tight. And now you want to be loose and relaxed and fluid, and right? But they don't know. What they imagine, and we all do this, we all imagine, what would it be like for me if I was in that scenario? So many years ago, I went through a divorce and I had to share it with some people. And the number one response was, aw. And then I'd watch their face drain. They weren't listening to me. They were thinking about the fight they had with their spouse. Hey, maybe I'll get divorced too. What would that be like if I got divorced, right? My grandfather passed away. When I shared it, people were like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. No, it was actually a great thing because he was suffering for years. He's no longer suffering. But they didn't take the time to get that experience. So a simple thing of, hey, going through divorce, that happens a lot. What's that about for you? I'll tell you what, I'm excited for the first time in my 10 years, and I was frustrated. I felt it. And you're like, oh, this is a different experience. But when you relate you're putting your own viewpoint, your own judgment on it. You're killing off the opportunity for letting them go deeper. I promise you right now, if you learn how to master that, you will change every relationship you have because you will not be interrupting people on things that they want to actually share. You'll create a space for people to share, and then you'll be one of the few people in their lives that they'll go, she gets me. That's a very powerful context to come from. So speaking of PLD, when I was in PLD, and this is a game of life, but there's an enrollment game where you're getting people to tune into things. I had a friend who had heard this talk many years. And she got to watch across the room me have a conversation with someone. And there was like people walking around, there was all this stuff and distraction and everything else the whole time. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I've mastered this skill. I never broke eye contact. I never related. I just stayed in the conversation. We got up. The person that observed came over and said, I now understand what you're talking about. Because there was every reason in the world to be distracted and get off track on it. But when you lock in and you listen with your heart and you really want to care about what they're sharing, it's a game changer. I'm gonna tell you right now, you may not wanna do this. Take it home, try it in your primary relationships. You got adult kids, that they're searching. If you would. You may not agree with what they're doing. I've got kids too, so I'm not saying like, they're all doing right. But if you can listen through the lens they're sharing, and I'm gonna give you a couple little techniques to go deeper with, it will change quite a bit about it. Okay,
Can we repeat that? You said it creates a space for someone. You mentioned that, what did you say it does? It creates a space for the other person to do what?
great question. Watch the replay.
Okay. That's why we recorded it.
That's great. Sorry.
It was
does-
brilliant.
It is brilliant.
We caught it on.
It's
camera.
gone. This happens with Dave and I. He goes, can you say that again? I'm like, no. Said that just. So my belief is you write your notes. There's a few things you have going on, and then you just let it go. And whatever gets downloaded from, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, this comes out. I'm like, cool.
Did you say that it creates a safe space for them to understand or know that got it?
Yes. There you go. That's exactly. You get them.
Yeah, you hit them.
Yep. All right. So relating is all about you, and a true listener makes it all about them. I'm gonna give you a couple little things to write down, just little points. So number one was listening, listen, don't relate. Number two, write down, master how to ask questions. Now we all go, okay, that's pretty basic. Yeah, it is, until you really work at it. And then you realize, wow. It's like, anybody ever watch a basketball game, right? Free throw, there's no defense, nobody on you. Like you can take your time, you get your breath, right? Get in rhythm. It's not that easy. But the masters of it have figured out how to practice it. They do it all the time. So a little cheat code on how to ask questions if you don't know, make this sound. What are you talking about? Where are you going? Why is that important? When do you want to be there? Right? It's just the easiest thing. Just think of what should I be asking after that?
Preferably with a word, don't just get
It just gets you started, right? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that sound, but went to this class and he said, make that sound and you start talking more. So I want you to be, I want you to be clear when you ask why. It could elicit a defensive reaction. Okay, because it's somewhat of a controversial or a confrontational question. It's okay to ask, just be prepared, depending on where the person who's communicating, where they're coming from, that why could elicit a little bit of a defensive response. And if you sense them getting defensive, again, because you're completely engaged in listening, you let them know, oh, no, I didn't mean anything about that. I was really trying to understand at the core. You really want to understand. They will get your energy. Like, okay, that was innocent. But I have seen it happen where you go, well, why is that important? What do you mean? Not that that would happen in a marriage or anything else. So, all right. When you ask questions, you encourage conversations. When you make statements, you stifle it. We hear with our ears and we listen with our eyes. You hear with your ears, you listen with your eyes. Ask questions and you encourage conversation, make statements and you stifle it. Statements are usually rooted from opinion and we're sharing our viewpoint. Now, at some point, remember I said the hot air, there's only so much in a balloon. At some point, you're going to then use the word retort. It's going to be your turn to speak again. But at this point, if you're going to be a master of effective communication, you need to understand where the other person's coming from. After effective listening requires knowing how to ask questions, I want you to write down, one must be centered in curiosity. be centered in curiosity. And so curiosity, my definition of it is a strong desire to know or learn. That's in this context, a strong desire to know or learn. That curiosity is what's going to lead you down a path. So I walk into virtually every conversation I go into, and I'm open and I want to understand. That's it. I want to understand. What are you trying to accomplish? If you can remember, some of you were in the business during the downturn of the market after the financial crisis. I would have clients calling me, I've got to short sell my home. And I'm like, okay, let's talk. And when I go meet with them and I'm looking at the numbers, I'm like, oh, you're only like 20,000, 30,000 upside down. House fits perfectly for your family. You know, this is all through questioning. You can afford the payment. Like, why do you want to do it? Well, everybody I work with is doing it. And I'm literally like, yeah, no, you don't need to. And there's a school teacher client of mine I've helped multiple times. I mean, going back, I think a first sale I did was like 28 years ago. And they called me and they were in a panic. These are just husband and wife school teacher. I mean, some of the best people on earth. And they were both freaked out. And when I said, I was like, no. This does not make sense. I took the time to understand where they're coming from, the emotion, fear. By the way, as you guys know, the news, media, anybody seeing anything about NAR proposal that may not be accurate as to what actually is going on? And it's running wild. Even people in our own industry are freaking about things that aren't even part of it. Fear runs everything, but our job in life, if you want to be an effective producer, understand fully where that person's coming from, so then you can help them move. And this again is in all areas of life. So, this is just a little side note. Okay, we can email this out because I want to make sure I get through the rest of the notes, because I don't want to repeat this 10 times. Curiosity is one of the greatest secrets of happiness. Okay. Did you know curious people are happier? Research has actually shown curiosity to be associated with higher levels of positive emotion and lower levels of anxiety and having more satisfaction with life. So if nothing else, if you don't want to learn about somebody, just have a better life and be curious.
Sorry for my health.
For your health, absolutely. Sure. And then with curiosity, it allows you to expand your empathy. What are they actually going through? So my favorite part is, and like, I'll take my daughter, for example, when she was going through the teenage years, which I think you're knocking on the door yeah. So like I'd come home and it'd be all kinds of a hormone thing going on where when I left in the morning, everything was good. Now, what's going on? And this came in very handy because I would just remain curious. Now, the moment I gave my opinion, the emotions went even higher because I don't know anything. Right? They don't. It was a good learning opportunity for me to just stay curious and help me understand more and not put my viewpoint and not, like a lot of us just, let me solve the problem. This is easy, right? So again, this works in other areas. Effective listening. To master effective listening, you must take a position of neutrality. Neutrality in tone, words, and gestures. I gave you the example about divorce. What does that mean from one person to another? The moment you're not neutral, the moment they start guarding themselves. It's just reality. Learning how to stay neutral is very effective because you're not the judge or the jury. You're here to be an effective communicator. The moment you come across the judge or a jury, you ain't getting the whole story. I guarantee you that. The moment somebody figures out you're judging them one way or the other, they start pulling back. Oh, that's enough. They're not going to say this consciously. Most of this is running around in the background. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe we went too far, maybe back. Right? Anybody ever share too much? And I'm like, damn, no, can't eat those words. All right. So effective listening, the next point is requires staying in context. Effective listening requires staying in context. It allows us to be an interviewer, not an interrogator. Anybody ever watch any of those lawyer shows that get somebody up on the stand? What were you eating on Thursday morning at 9 a.m.? What car did you drive? It's like nothing makes sense. Well, they're trying to get that person off balance, to get them to trip up. People's own natural reaction when they feel like they're being interrogated is to do what?
Shut down.
Shut down. That's right. Well, it's not going, you know, it's not a smart path. But those of you that go on and need to write notes on everything when you're interviewing somebody, when you master how to stay in context, your conversations all have a linear form of how you got there. They don't go like this anymore. So it's literally like, oh yeah, okay, that's how we found out about moving to Colorado to take care of the grandkids, right? It's a process of, if they're talking about time, you ask questions regarding time. You don't ask questions about some other subject like money. Now you can draw a parallel later outside of it. But again, when we want to be an effective communicator, this is understanding them. Remember in the beginning, what makes communication? Just an understanding. And that's what we're striving for. Be effective at this. We want to gain understanding. So I know I just fire hosed you guys with a lot of information in a short period of time.
You also do another hour.
We can continue this on. But before we go any further, I want to just see what questions that have come. And then we'll do a couple of exercises. Sure. Yes, Dave.
Talked about, the minute you start to judge, you screwed up. Is the opposite true? If you start to just commiserate and agree, even though you might. You also.
Well, what do people want? People want sympathy or empathy?
Usually.
Empathy. Usually it's going to be empathy is a more effective tool. When you commiserate, you're in sympathy. There is a time at some point in the conversation later that you may say, I too always wanted to go to Colorado. I too had gone through. I too had a family member that I cared about pass away. But when you interrupt and relate in the middle, you're ending. So just imagine an amazing meal was presented and it was just put down in front of you. Somebody went, oh, I like that. The meal's over for you. You get them to reveal something that's important. Go deep with it. Stay in there. Find out more. And this is true, not just for clients. This is true for all the relationships you have. Somebody brought something up. Now, when I really first started mastering this, and unfortunately for Shannon, she was guinea pig on a lot of stuff because I would make mistakes on it. But I know the day that I nailed this is we were sitting in the bedroom and she started like sharing with me and I just stayed. And I asked more questions. I stayed in context. I didn't relate. I never judged. And 2.5 hours later, she was like, this is the greatest conversation we have ever had. And I was like, I am exhausted. But I knew, okay, I got it. That was the first time I mastered it in a primary relationship. Professional. I'd left a real estate seminar in Orange County, and I was really starting to get good at this. And I said, whoever sits next to me on the plane, I'm going to work this on them. Not to do, remember in the beginning, the oath, there was nothing evil. I wanted to practice my skill set. This young lady sat down next to me. She had just graduated from Stanford. Throughout the course of the 50-minute flight, it's not very long. She had asked me for advice. She was offered an opportunity to come back to Stanford to complete her master's. She was facing an offer from Microsoft at the time to go up there. And she was just recently proposed to and wasn't sure if she should accept and turn away her career options and things like that. She cried. We laughed. We finished the flight. It was time to get up. She turned and she said, "It was so good to get to know you." Gave me the biggest hug. And I said to her, "I really enjoyed getting to know you as well. And just humor me for a minute. Out of curiosity, what's my name?" Her face went completely blank and she went, "I don't think I ever asked you anything." And I said, "No, that's absolutely okay. I'm Joe, and I'm honored to have had this conversation with you." My point being is there is this going on in the world all the time. You want to have more valuable relationships with clients, with friends, take this on. The key is going to be your relator and your listen. Those are going to be the big trips, right? How we listen. We're listening to be responded, we listen to be right, or we listen to understand, and then give them that feeling that they have been, right? That we get where they're at. When we get to that point, people will trust you at a level they never trust anybody else. I have had clients standing in front of homes of their parents that they were raised in, and the parents passed away, and we're now selling it, crying, not because of the sale. I've had them tell me multiple times, "I'm now going to have to get a therapist because you have been there to listen to me through this." And that was my role, right? You guys have heard the saying, I'm a real estate agent, but I'm really a realist, right? I help you buy real estate and deal with the emotional shit that comes along with it. That's my professional job. Your job is to bring out the best in people, to find out what struggle they're having, whether it be in your personal life or otherwise, and how can you help move them through it. Most of the time, we need somebody that we can, as Shannon says, dump the purse, right? When she gets together with girlfriends, go ahead, dump the purse. Put it all on the table, let's get it out, and then we can put the pieces back together. We do that less formally in this context if we be with people. Your relator, and trust me, you're gonna notice, shit, I just took over that conversation. Dang it, I made it about me because I was really excited about that topic. Don't beat yourself up in that moment. Just notice it and go, "Excuse me for a minute. I'm sorry I got so excited about going to Colorado.
All right.
Let's get back to now. Why? Tell me what's that about for you?" So the moment you realize you're off track, it's just a trigger to go back in. Promise you. You take this on, the depth of your relationships, so much more fulfilling. You want to get referrals from people in business? They will refer you to the end of it because you and them have a connection. I promise you, you will create a space with them that very few people in their lives have. And that's a good thing. That's why I also made sure that you said you're not going to use this for evil. Because it will blow up on you. I promise you. Try and talk somebody into buying something or doing something or divorce their husband, and everything. You're going to be the one hating. Your job is just to listen, help them understand, repeat it back to them, gain clarification. Then, if it's in this case, a real estate sales context, you'll say, "Here's a couple of options I think we need to explore." And it lines up with you getting to Colorado, be with the grandkids. You want to do it before school's out. Da, da, da. Questions? Yes.
So being in real estate now, coming across people that are like brand new to us and stuff, do people ever get weirded out by these types of questions if they aren't normal? And
You're going to get weirded out. You'll get weirded out by the information they're sharing with you before they get weirded out on what they're sharing. Now, if you're very confrontational on it, this is why the acknowledgement comes up. If somebody shares something with me, I will say, "Okay, so I here's what I heard. Da da da." I'll repeat it back. I mean, it makes sense. Help me understand more about it, and peel the layer a little deeper. It's a natural progression. So if you want to write a couple of cheat code questions, words like "help me understand," "tell me more about what's important to you," "help me understand," I mean, all that kind of stuff. It weaves its way right in naturally. And again, if you come from curiosity, they won't get weirded out. You'll get weirded out. Because you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they're telling me this. I've had people tell me they're getting a divorce and they haven't told the spouse. And they've told me the drug addictions, the cheating and all this sort of stuff, and I'm literally like, I really don't want to know any of this, but I'm in now. I can't pull the plug and run. I've got to finish and close this out, you know what I mean? But I look at that as that's the role, that's the responsibility that I get to have, and I keep it in a safe place, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kind of. You still think people are gonna get weird?
Well, I,
Some people will say, well, I'm not really comfortable talking about it. I was like, cool,
yeah, like,
no problem.
trust that I actually wanted to hear their answer. Like, people that walk in with, oh, like, realtors or used car salesmen, and I want to show all my cards kind of thing. So I just didn't know if that was something.
Could be. I mean, my typical response of somebody being a bit closed, guarded, I will say the best way I can help is to fully understand what you're trying to accomplish and what you're going through so that I can actually walk in your shoes with you so that we can solve these problems together. But please only share what you feel comfortable sharing. And go back in and so you want to buy a home, here's why, and start going. But I wouldn't over worry about that. There are guarded people in the world, and maybe that's the way they're gonna be. That's fine. It's a good question. Any others?
I had a comment, because I've obviously been in the school of Jody for a long time, and I love it. What you're gonna have fun with, and what I have fun with, is you spot the relators in the parties and networking events. Because somebody's getting on a real heater and you're listening good, and then bam, oh, now it's all on that person to like,
Stole my glory.
Mm.
And it's true. Yeah, it does happen. I know some perpetual relators that interrupt conversations that they weren't actually part of it. They came in, they heard one piece, took it over, and they're like,
Joe, a friend of ours, John, Joe and I were talking, like totally engaged, and John came up next to us and he started talking about trying to interact, and Joe's like, hey, I've been talking to Carrie for about 7-8 minutes, we're still not quite done. Do you mind if we give us a little bit of time? But I was like, oh, damn, like I was like, as soon as he walked away, I was like, oh. But I mean, Joe or John respected it. I'm sure you guys circled back, whatever, but
Yeah.
that actually was perfect for it to happen because we really did need to finish our conversation.
Yeah, we're gonna have
Somebody
to-
hijacked it, and you've got to set boundaries.
Yeah.
So
Before I go to yours, are there any questions on Zoom? Are we good?
No.
We don't have, okay.
Oh, maybe we did. Oh, no, Steve's saying, thank you, great class.
Okay, good. Ursula.
What Carrie had just mentioned had me thinking, and maybe that's another class, how can you help navigate, you're the one that wants to share and help someone listen.
Remember in the beginning, I said you're gonna find out how few people actually care. You've gotta pick what's,
I just gotta be okay with that.
yeah, you have to have great friends that are willing to listen. And say, I need to have a conversation here, because the place that I'm going. And Shannon, I taught her this 20 years ago. And I told her that as you perfect this, you're gonna get, your feelings are gonna get hurt. Shannon, if you know my wife, she's like big love and like wants to help the world. Like anybody that she can help, she wants to help. Like that's just who she is. Well, she's gotten to the place where she's conscious, she'll still interrupt, because she gets excited. That's cool. Well, what she's noticing now is she's like, nobody ever asked me anything anymore, anywhere I go. I'm like, yeah, they never did. You just related and then jumped in. Right? I mean, and that's a lot of times I walk around when I'm at a party, I'm like, boy, it would sure be nice to actually share a viewpoint here, but everybody's vibing on themselves, so I guess the role I'm playing is listener tonight, again, my favorite role.
what helped me personally is when like, if I need Chris or the kids to really, I'll look at them and be like, I can tell you're not listening, I really need you to listen to me, just hear me for like 2 minutes, like fully listen, like I feel like do a flag. And that's actually work, like, oh, she can tell that I'm not listening or giving her crap, like. And then I repeat the face, repeat after me. I do that with the kids. I don't know how to do that with adults so much, but really, I need you to just fully listen. I also go to my kids and say, do you need it? Do you want me to hear you, hug you, or help? So you ask those questions, and then, so that's helped me be a better listener. So like, I don't want you to say anything, I just want you to hear me. Better.
Very good. And
Sorry, I've taken over the conversation.
so you're young,
Noticing, see.
passionate about them. So one thing I'm very guilty of, just stop talking. When I notice that, somebody I'm speaking to is no longer listening, I stop. I stop for a couple reasons. One, I'm wasting my time. But the other side of it is I realize that where I'm at, I've missed something along the line. That's why I'm off track, because I no longer have the attention. And so my notes, and I didn't go that deep into it again because we're time. When somebody is not listening to what's being revealed to you, is the fact that your understanding of the situation is radically insufficient. You're not holding their attention. You may be with somebody who's not a good listener as well, but my note is stop talking and they'll tell you exactly who they are and what they're up to. And believe them. It's times like, again, I'll go back to this client conversation because I'll be like starting to go down. We've kind of melted all the information we need. Or if you need to go, it's a little bit rough. Well.
Sneak out without anyone knowing that.
Zero would call that shit out.
I just know like she probably got a hot kid with her husband. Here. The stop talking part, for me, when I'm with a client, I'm like, okay, they're not done yet. Now, there are some clients that are never done. And so then I have to go, okay, I've gotten all the information that I need to glean from this. Now I'm gonna need to interrupt. Cultural, and you mentioned this earlier, cultural, you will also have to learn, if they're an interrupter, you have to interrupt back after you've mined for enough gold. Like you understand enough about the circumstance that now in order to get a word in edgewise, you have to interrupt. My first wife, Tracy, we went back to New York. We're having a big Italian family dinner. There's probably 15 people around the table. And it's one of those like 6-7 course meals. My grandmother cooks for like 2 days, right? You all get the scene. And it is loud, hands are moving, food left and right. We get done with dinner. Tracy didn't say a word. And afterwards I said to her, I go, how you doing? You're really quiet. She's like, I'm exhausted. And I said, how are you exhausted? She goes, I never get a chance to speak. I go, you gotta cut somebody off in this family, or you're never gonna say anything for years. So sometimes the cutoff, come in and say, hold on. If you guys want a good pattern interrupt, a way to break somebody who's constantly taking over conversation and you want to grab back control of it, you repeat back one of the last few things they've said, but you say it at a higher octave, like a higher tone. So if your normal tone is like this, I'll give you an example. They said, well, and then yesterday I went to 7-Eleven to get a Slurpee. You go, 7-Eleven? And it's a hardwire reboot on their brain. And you go, I drove by there yesterday and I was thinking about our meeting today. So let's get back to talking about selling your home.
Nice.
And they'll be like, oh, okay. Because there are people that are absolutely clueless as to their ramblings on. I've got the information. I know how I can help them professionally. Pattern interrupt. I'll take anything that's in grandkids. My last client who I helped sell their home, they had grandkids and they were really excited about getting to it. So let's get back to talk about the price of your property, right? These are little techniques that you learn them The first time you do it, you're gonna be like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm about to do this. It's really gonna work. And you're gonna do it, they're gonna look at you and you'll be like, okay, now what? Oh, that's right, I gotta start talking. They're gonna talk. Right? By the way, my recommendation to you guys is practice this every. Like, just take your notes today, debrief what we've gone through. By the way, I was a very good student in school, but I was a great student in college. And what I learned in college is immediately after any course that I took, I would go and I would rewrite my notes and expand my thinking and things like that. Somehow I owned it. In this regard, I would encourage you all to do that tonight. Then starting tomorrow, maybe you didn't start tonight if you're kind of brave, start trying these things out. Find some people in the room, go, hey, let's partner up and work on this together, right? If I relate, please just let me know. Like, maybe not immediately, oh, you just related, took over the conversation, but you may come back to them later and say, hey, from a feedback, you were supposed to be interviewing me or asking me questions. And in the middle, I found about your trip to Colorado and you went skiing and, how you almost broke your leg. And, it was, oh shit, I got way off track, right? Help each other. The thing about practicing this way, it's safe. Then when it actually matters, you're going to be good at it.